I want to talk to you about Silicon Valley. As much as it's been covered for the last quarter century, I don't think the coverage is even close to explaining how significant it has been. They're great stories like yours of people who have been so successful, but the influence over our culture, our government, our economy, and the world is just so massive. If someone like you understands engineering, markets, economics, technology, there was a long period where you had to live in Silicon Valley if you wanted to succeed and have the relationships and the interactions. Is that still the case? Is Silicon Valley still a place you have to physically be if you want to excel, someone with those skills?
Yeah, so I should start by saying I'm an import, right? So I'm from out of town. I grew up in the rural Midwest, northern Wisconsin, kind of in the tundra. And so I didn't grow up here. I didn't get to participate kind of in the heyday of back when we actually. By the way, it was called Silicon Valley because they originally made chips here, right?
Yeah.
Speaking of manufacturing, they of course long since stopped doing that. That's now thoroughly illegal in California. And so, I wasn't here for that. I wasn't here for the personal computer. And so I'm an inheritor of, the phenomenon that you're describing that other people built.
What year did you show up?
Yeah, so I showed up in 1994. And, Silicon Valley is really dated. It sort of dates to the early 50s, with Hewlett Packard in particular as sort of the original company.
But the 90s is when so much of what we think of now in terms of consumer facing, social media, internet, right? I mean, that's a pretty big dividing line. So yeah, you missed the Hewlett Packard days, but you were there for the phase we're in now, right?
Yeah, but I just bring it up because basically the history of Silicon Valley is it's a sequence of waves, right? And so it's part of what makes it special is this AI is like wave 9 or wave 10 of these like just major basic microprocessors and smartphones and kind of cloud and social and mobile, like all these the PC kinds of all these waves have hit. So anyway, my point is like in the Valley, like we're the inheritor of a tradition and a system and a model that was built by other people. And then to your question on geographic focus, this is very interesting thing playing out right now. So a couple things. So one is like, look, like I said, like the technology that's built in Silicon Valley is diffusing nationally and globally into ordinary people's hands, like at a far faster rate than in the past. So you don't have to be in Silicon Valley to get access to the best technology. Like you can now get that from everywhere. And that's very important because that didn't used to be the case. Having said that, if you want to be at the company or start a company that's going to build the leading edge technology itself from scratch, I would say at this point, like maybe you don't need to be in Silicon Valley proper, but like you better strongly consider, and if you're not, there's maybe 3 or 4 other places in the country where you can give it a shot. But primarily the people who want to do that are coming to Silicon Valley. And the important thing in the last 5 years that happened actually was during COVID, we all thought actually that the Silicon Valley geographic concentration was actually unwinding. And we thought that, virtual work and remote work and, you could be able to start companies everywhere. And you had all these kind of booms happening in places like Miami and Austin and other places with lots of high-tech entrepreneurs. And, it felt like the whole thing was, really distributing out. AI basically has snapped everything right back into the 20-mile square radius around where I sit to just an incredible degree. So I would say like almost 100% of the actually interesting AI companies in the West are happening at sort of ground zero right here in Silicon Valley. And then, by the way, and this is good news and bad news, by the way, the other place in the world where these things are happening is basically, the Shanghai, Beijing axis in China.
Right.
These are the two places. And then you also say a very important thing, which is it's just not happening elsewhere in the world. And there's kind of, high-tech clusters in other places, but, if you're a sharp AI person and, I'll just pick on one, London, like you have already moved to California or you're going to,
right.
Because they have just, essentially decided to outlaw it. The EU has decided to outlaw it. And so, people are being driven to the US and to California, I think in a way that's even more concentrated than it was when I first got here.
All right, last question. Name inventions in human history that have more benefited the lives of individuals than the iPhone.
Oh, well, I mean, if you go far enough back, electric lighting was a big deal. Steam power was a big deal. Obviously antibiotics are the easy call. I mean, the internet itself, electricity, it's indoor plumbing. It's hard to question those. And people sometimes say like, you guys aren't inventing important things. Like, why aren't you inventing something as important as indoor plumbing? And it's like, well, that was a big one, I concede, but like, we did solve that problem. We can move on to other things.
I would, if you said give up your iPhone or switch to an outhouse, I would switch to an outhouse.
I think I think there's a lot to that, and maybe the serious point underneath that, which
I was being serious. I was being serious.
No. Well, no, but so maybe, or just say the generalization you can make from that is, I think people maybe systematically underrate the importance of communication. So being able to be connected with other people, and then being able to actually, be able to learn things, be able to get access to information, like those two things. There's something in the culture. I was just saying, in Silicon Valley culture, there's something where like those are like looked down on as less important. And I actually think, to your point, like they're actually incredibly important, and they're foundational for everything else that people do. I mean, human connection and human learning is both of those are at the center of everything that we do. And so, yeah, no, I would make that same trade.
Here's my idea for a reality show. You put someone like us in Cleveland for a week without their smartphone, and give them a series of tasks which they would otherwise conduct with their smartphone. Good luck.
By the way, I had relatives in the 70s who still had outhouses, right? Like,
it's fine.
The past was 100%. Well, it's fine. In Iowa in January, you start to reconsider whether that's fine in the middle of the night when it's 40 below. But the past was not that long ago.
I know.
That's right.
All right, Marc Andreessen, very grateful to you. Scratch the surface. I had a list of about 15,000 questions that AI winnowed down to me to 1,500, but we didn't get to them all. Very grateful to you, though, for making time. And again, just not many people on the planet who understand this stuff as well as you do. So grateful to you for sharing, and hopefully we inspired a few people to learn how to use the latest technology. If you're 64 years old or older, this is an important announcement. The Department of Justice recently sued 3 major Medicare brokers for claiming they were unbiased while allegedly pushing people into plans that got them the biggest kickbacks. It's true, so many insurance agents, they just can't be trusted, but you also cannot rely on the government to give you the best information that you need either. That's why I want you to know about something called Chapter. Chapter was started by people who went through all of this personally after their own parents were pushed into the wrong Medicare plan by an agent who was more focused on commissions than on good care. Chapter's mission is very simple. They want to give every American the honest, straightforward Medicare advice that they deserve. And here's what makes them different from everybody else. They're the only Medicare advisor that compares every plan nationwide, not just a few. That saves their clients an average of $1,100 a year. There's really no reason not to call. It's quick, it's easy, and they can review your options in under 20 minutes. If you're in the right plan already, they'll let you know that. But if there's a better plan, they'll help you make the switch. This could be the most important call you make this year. Dial pound 250 and say Chapter Medicare to get peace of mind. Again, that's pound 250 and say Chapter Medicare.